Why don't we just go ahead and tell her that we're divorcing?
Oh, just like that?
Yeah.
That's not fair.
May, this isn't any easier.
Let's not tell her. Let's stay friends instead. Yes, let's stay friends forever. I love you, Cody. I love you too, May.
Alrighty, what is going on, everyone? So today is the 3-year anniversary of It Takes Two, and I thought what better way to celebrate that than a main cast reunion. So without further ado, everybody please welcome Joseph Balderrama as Cody and Dr. Hakim, Annabelle Dowler as May, and Clare Corbett as Rose. How are we all doing today?
Hey.
Good, thank you.
Good.
Good.
So yeah, how does it feel that the game came out 3 years ago? It really doesn't feel like it. As a fan of the game, 3 years has just flown by really quickly.
That is scary because it was in the middle of the pandemic that it came out, I think. I think we were in lockdown when it came out. I remember it sort of helped enormously with keeping my sanity with my 2 kids off school at home and they could actually play it. But yeah, that is crazy. 3 years.
Oh, makes me feel old.
Yeah, I'm with Claire. Let's not talk about numbers. Numbers don't matter.
But it's still being played. My nephew's loving it. He's just started playing it. So
nice.
It's one of those people seem to be loving every time someone new, people seem to be discovering it recently all the time.
It does seem to endure, doesn't it? It seems like I still find myself working on other games and stuff and people go, oh, you did, oh my God. And, they're very excited about that game more than really anything else that I've ever done, actually.
Yeah.
Because I started playing it when it first came out. I played it with my friend, and then I've recently just started playing it with my girlfriend, and we are up to the last chapter, so we're going to finish it tomorrow. So I already know the ending, but she has no idea what to expect, so very exciting.
Fantastic.
And that's the thing with my kids as well. They like playing the other character. My son's played Cody throughout, and then he's gone back and he does it as May now with different friends who come over and whatever.
I played as May both times.
Would you say May got all the better stuff? May does have the better mechanics, doesn't she?
I think so, yeah.
So unfair.
What is sort of your favourite part about the character, whether it be mechanics like we said, or sort of the story or the backstory, or just sort of, their voice? What is your favourite part of your character?
I mean, for me, it's just looking back, because I've not played the game. I have to be honest. I don't even know how to work a controller properly, which really frustrates my kids. So I can't speak from playing the game, but from just filming it and making it. There were so many fun bits to film. I'm just thinking now, it just comes to mind riding the New York frog taxi, things like that. Flying in the sky with the underpants and squirrels. I mean, there were loads of bits running away from, what was he called? Moon Baboon?
Moon Baboon.
There were just so many random weird bits, and we just had to keep facing these bizarre adventures every day. But we had these sort of terrible cardboard props to work with in the studio. And what's it called? The thing that May has, it's like a machine gun, And I had this sort of huge, there's a special name for it though, isn't it? And I can't even remember. You'll know because you're in the game at the moment.
I don't know.
It was an in-joke, I think, from another one of Joseph's games. It had a name that had been used from something else. The Drill Plaza something 2000.
yeah, it's a very long name. That's why I can't remember. But yeah, there's a lot of just jumping into scenes. Every scene began with us having to just jump in and off, and then jump out onto another crash mat or something, or slide down a crash mat. I mean, as you know, Joseph's crazy imagination just led to all these wacky characters that we had to meet along the way. So I suppose it was a different tone at the end, wasn't it? The whole her singing in front of the audience and the music and the orchestra and all that. That was. I quite like the disco scene. I quite like being DJs. That was good.
I'll be honest, at the end of that scene, when I first played it, I did have a cold, but I did cry when that happened, so it was a very sweet and touching ending to the game.
Oh, that's good.
For me, it was all of it. I think it was probably the most fun job I think I've ever done, and I had the sort of added cherry on top of the cake of being able to do Dr. Hakim's voice as well as playing Cody, which was sort of a entirely unique ever experience, because you don't You don't ever get offered the opportunity to do that. And so Joseph Fares did all the mocap for Dr. Hakim. So the physical movement of what you see of Dr. Hakim, Joseph, when we filmed it, or when we shot it or captured it, whatever the term is, he was Dr. Hakim. So I had to sort of like unlock my brain in terms of when I came to do the sort of essentially ADR for Dr. Hakim, because I just had Joseph in my head, and he would normally, to be perfectly honest, ramble completely off script. And so I was having to like match the crazy stuff he was doing, which was in and of itself a massive challenge, and to take like his cadence and his Swedish Lebanese cocktail of Josephness out of my head. So that I really enjoyed that sort of dual challenge. You know, I think what I enjoyed most is getting to know the process of like mocap game making. It was my first opportunity and first chance that I ever had to do that. You know, me and Annabelle got on like a house on fire and sort of straight away. I mean, she did become very annoying as it went on, obviously. But,
we've not seen each other since. This is our first time. Hi, nice to meet you.
Yeah, we don't speak anymore. But we just got on really well, and so the chemistry that we had together, I think, shows in the game, and we had a lot of freedom given to us by Joseph and the team to play and improvise, and I think loads of things came out of that. I got to realize how inefficient TV and filmmaking is, to be honest. You know, we were doing like 25 to 30 sides in 2 or 3 days max. You know, that would take you a month at least if you were working in a different medium. It was almost like the closest I've ever got to being in front of a camera and feeling like it was a play. And that was thrilling, and it was just fun. It was just silly. And you know, like, I think both me and Annabelle were a bit like, so this game is about what? So they're getting divorced, and then are you sure this is gonna work? Anyway, let's just go for it. And so I think everyone just sort of like trusted him because he's so confident, and you just kind of go, well, you seem to know what you're doing, so let's go. Everything he prophesized and everything he sort of like said in a way which made us both go, I don't know about this. He was right. You know, he had the courage of his convictions, and we all made a brilliant game together. I think the storyline that fed into the mechanics was a really clever thing. The fact that you can't play it without another person. I think, as Annabelle said, the fact that it landed during lockdown was like, it came at a time in the world where potentially the world needed It Takes Two. Dare I say it.
I had a really different process to everyone else, because what was really interesting is I auditioned first of all for the mum. So I remember meeting Annabelle in a park, and she said, I got this job, and I went, oh my God, I went up for that. And she was like, I'm back to fly out and do some mocap. And I was like, that's amazing. So it must have been about like a year later. So that they were all doing all the mocap, doing all the story stuff. And they had someone who did the physical stuff for Rose, didn't you? Who was a
actress.
I had no idea that this job was still a thing. And I got to audition for Rose, just voice, and went in, but they showed me some of the mocap stuff. I was like, is Annabelle? That's the job they're doing. So I put all these things together. I was like, I'm playing their daughter. This is so weird. But such an amazing part to play. And those scenes are quite tough. I was going through a divorce at the same time, which was random. So I was sat doing where, you know, you two come together and have to tell her that it's going to be a divorce. And I was literally going through that as an adult with my kids, thinking, oh my God, this is like, this is I might learn something here. How do you do this?
Taking notes.
It was so random. But anyway, they're quite intimate, sweet scenes, those scenes that she has with her parents. And it was fantastic to do. Obviously, you're not in a room with anyone else. You're not responding off of anyone else. You're hearing their voices, if that's been recorded, which it had done. So obviously these two actors here being so brilliant, if you get played what they've done, you can respond off of it. So I was just in a studio, so I sadly didn't get to do the mocap. So I feel a bit of a fraud being here, because these guys worked on it for like, I don't know how many years was it, like 4 or 5 years?
2 years, I think. 2 years of going out to Stockholm, and then of course doing more ADR after and that sort of thing.
So I suppose I probably came into it after the 2 years and did a sort of year and a half on it, because you come back in randomly, don't you? So they've done another bit
Yeah,
of the game.
and there was a hiatus where, because of lockdown, we stopped flying out to Stockholm, because we would fly out to Stockholm sort of once a month or once every 2 months. And we'd literally fly out on a Wednesday night and we'd film 2 days and then we'd fly back. And we'd get our scripts a few days before. We'd learn all lines on the plane. We'd do a quick read through together in the hotel. And then we'd be sort of learning during the day. Peppy and I just doing scene by scene. And they were short scenes, so they weren't difficult to learn. But then we couldn't go out to Stockholm anymore because of lockdown. But we were luckily able to keep recording some stuff, which was fantastic because we could keep working during those months where most people weren't. And then we did go, Pepe and I did get to go, I think, out for 2 more trips to Stockholm in between when they opened up airports and all that again more. But that was a shame that Claire didn't get to go out to Stockholm, because I have to say that was sort of the cherry on the cake with the job. It was just such a joy to get to know such a gorgeous, beautiful city and just have a really fun time there as well. And feel like you're sort of part of this whole company that is Hazelight, and be in their offices and their studios and see the guys there every 2 months. It was a really unique experience in that way.
Yeah, sounded amazing.
Yeah, because I was going to ask, did you record? Annabelle just leave?
He's had enough.
Fell off her chair.
Come on,
She's just booking flights to Stockholm.
So, as I was saying, I was wondering if you recorded your lines before all of like the animation was done, but it sounds like it was a bit of both. Like you recorded it and then you had to go back to lockdown. So did you do your recording before the animation and the mocap, or was it kind of a bit of both?
All it was simultaneous.
The cutscenes that you see, the cutscenes are all done at the same time, movement and vocally, all captured at the same time, voice and movement. It's only the ADR, the extra sounds, the shouts, the what do you call them, the all the different
efforts.
That go with the actual game playing that we did after. But everything you see in the cutscenes was done there and then.
They're all also weirdly one-take wonders. So the way that we had to do the scene in one take, and they would choose the take they like best and edit that one take, if that makes sense. Yeah. So obviously, because of the way, they've got cameras everywhere, and they animated to us. So all the animation and all the production, all that came after we'd done the scene.
Because you had to do sort of one take from start to finish multiple times, was there like one particular scene that was just the worst one? It was like just such a pain to kind of get right?
I don't remember the big one. Do you, Pepe? It was incredibly satisfying in that way that we very rarely did more than 3 takes on a scene. Very rarely. And because, like Pepe said, there's no, you're not waiting like you are with film or TV for another setup or a costume change. You just move straight on. So, I mean, it was exhausting because we did so much in one day, but it was also really satisfying. There was no hanging around. What was really useful is that, I'd never done mocap before. You'd be in this big studio, and like Pepe says, it is a weird sort of cross between doing theatre as well, because you don't have to just think about where that one camera is. There were cameras all around the studio. You could move as freely as you wanted to, as long as you sort of hit your mark where you had to look like you were, I don't know, going into an igloo or onto the frog or whatever. You had a lot of freedom, and we'd watch the take back. And when they played the take back, obviously it didn't look like what you guys see now, but there was an animated May and Cody on a screen. It wasn't us in our black mocap suits. So we could see instantly what movement worked, what our limbs were doing. If me putting my hand on my head actually looked a bit weird, it looked like my hand was going into my head. So I think, right, I won't do that next time. Or it's not reading, that I'm confused or whatever, I'll do something bigger. And then you got a chance to do it again instantly and watch it back. Yeah, fine, great, let's move on. So it was really, really fast. But I don't know, Pepe, can you remember one being particularly difficult?
No, I think I remember the scene where they wake up. Because we had to travel and we were on one level, you were downstairs, I believe, in the house, and I'm upstairs. And you had to like come up the stairs, and then I had to come out, and we had to meet in the hallway. There were scenes that geographically we were on a flat plane, but in the game we weren't. And so there was a lot of just choreography to try and make sure that all of those moments happened at the right place, at the right time. I remember that being not like a pain, but that scene particularly, which was also quite an emotional scene in a way, became much more technical because of what we were trying to achieve on a flat surface. To be honest, I think once we understood the language of mocap and the fact that, you know, you don't have any of that stuff there. As Annabelle says, you have very basic props that have dots on them and so on. Or to give it so our hands are the right depth or width apart to like hold a massive hammer or whatever. Once we understood the physicality, and as Annabelle said, we were able to see what we did straight away, which was magic, because like Annabelle said, you could make those adjustments instantaneously when you did the next take, and you really got to see if you know, I was mainly concerned if jokes landed. That was my main preoccupation.
he was always adding in a final line to every scene. Some of them were very good and funny. What was tricky, I remember funny, like having Claire here now, was that scene when they do walk off on the end. Do you remember that was tricky in terms of getting the height? Because we didn't have a child being Rose. We had a Swedish actress who was taller than me. So, and I just remember it was all about if she was ahead or behind or something. So I don't know why that was so hard. I was like, can't they just change this and post animation? But apparently not. It had to all look right. And the pacing of that walk took a while.
Yeah, that's right.
I can remember. It was all pretty quick moving, wasn't it? Most of it, let's be honest.
So did you have much room to improvise your lines, or was it kind of strict in having to hit the specific lines of dialogue, or did you have kind of free roam?
We had a lot of freedom because, for one, I'm English. Pepe is, well, he'll explain, what, half American, half Mexican, schooled in England. Pepe, is that right? So, he obviously, but obviously May being British, Cody being American, and the guys who'd written the script being neither, being Lebanese, Swedish, or Korean Swedish, we'd often say to them, oh, actually, this doesn't sound right, or you've written May to American here, can I change this line and make her sound more British? And they were really, really open to that, weren't they? And we used to change quite a lot. You
know, working on a show maybe where like a long-running TV show or something, or in Annabelle's case, long-running radio show, you feel that you have a certain ownership and a kind of entitlement, I suppose, to go, I just don't feel like, it sounds a bit pretentious as possibly, but you're like, I just don't feel like I could even say that or do that or whatever. They allowed us to have that ownership and encouraged us to sort of to fly with that.
Just obviously in terms of my character, when it was all sort of set in stone really by then, so, and it was very specific obviously, and what a child says and what they wanted Rose to say and do was quite specific. So for me it was just the lines were there. Right. I couldn't just improvise. I probably would have if they'd let me. They don't let you do that a lot of the time in computer games, do they? If you're not doing the mocap, they're just here's the line, say it, and you go, maybe.
Yeah. In normal circumstances, like Claire says, when you work on a game, it's very rigid, and you really, if you don't think that it's a good line or whatever, you really have to like.
Yeah, shut up.
You have to make a big argument for changing lines because sometimes or frequently the writer's not there. So, you know, normally in a game, the organization of it, whoever is taking charge of that session with you, potentially doesn't have the authority to sort of go, yeah, sure, do that. Sometimes they do, and sometimes you've got the director or someone who does have that. More often than not, you just have to say the line, give them 3 options, and move on because it's about 150 other.
Yeah, it would be very kind of jarring if you're just like, you know what, I don't think they should get together, and then you just like start shifting it in the way you want it.
Well, funny you should say that. I think that was a decision that Joseph made because didn't we shoot various different endings, Annabelle?
Oh, really?
He wasn't sure how Hollywood to make the ending. I think what he really wanted to do was to have a sense that it wasn't just tied up in a neat bow and they were all going to be okay.
I felt that they weren't necessarily going to do that, but they just knew they had to make it work. Yeah, I'd be interested to know, Kyle, what you thought. Did you see them as getting back together as a couple at the end?
I think so too. Yeah, I feel like because it's not necessarily like a kid's game, but it has that kind of like kids aesthetic, so you can't really end it on too negative of a note. You can't just be like, no, actually, like Cody is the worst, so I'm gonna head out. Like you kind of gotta keep people a little bit like hopeful and optimistic at the end. So I did kind of expect it to go in that direction, but I honestly don't have a problem with it going in that direction. I didn't think it was sort of too Hollywood, so.
Yeah, well, that's good. I mean, Joseph would be pleased to hear that. Because his background is filmmaking, obviously, and he was sort of, I think, recoiling against making it too twee, I guess, at the end.
Right. Yeah, because I don't know if you guys have played or seen the ending to A Way Out, which is there is like a twist ending, or like the ending kind of goes in a direction that I didn't expect. So I don't want to say too much if you're not aware of that, but I feel like that was more of a surprising ending than It Takes Two. But not that I don't like the ending of It Takes Two, but it very much like shifts on you, and I was all for it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. No, I think like you say, that there was a limit to how much he could wrong step the audience, if you like, with the ending, because if they just kind of, the whole point is that they're working towards a sense of harmony, and so if at the end they're like, you know what, fuck you, and paying to see my lawyer, I think it would have been like very jarring. And so within the confines of what was available to him within, to end it, I think he just didn't want it to make it too like, oh, they get back together, that's nice.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I think that was the sort of thing.
Did you have any sort of directions you wanted it to go in particular, Claire, sort of being the daughter? Did you want them to get back together, or did you want them to go their separate ways?
Oh, I think as the kid of divorced parents, you're like, I want them to get back together. But friendship, just an amicable thing. Yeah, I'm sure. I think, yeah. And she's such a cute girl. Her thought patterns and what she was going to do, and I'm going to go and get, in that last scene that she has, just, it breaks your heart a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The kids just think it's kind of their fault, and unless you, so it was, yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm all for a happy ending. There's too much. Go, yeah, come on, let's make it work.
Especially because you said you were going through a divorce at the time. Were you kind of like taking notes and being like, all right, so don't do this, do this, kind of trying to see how it would go?
Well, I suppose it's just about communication, isn't it? In all forms, in all bits of life, it's just making sure your kids know that everything's going to be okay. And actually, mine was very amicable, actually. It was a really weird thing to be sat there going, I don't think I told them at the time. I thought, you don't want to get into that conversation. But when I was sitting there having to do that scene, I did think, oh my God, I might have to have this actual scene in my house at some point. But yeah, really weird.
I think it's not even just about the whole divorce and the child. It's just that thing of being in a long-term relationship that I think really resonated with May and Cody. Just that whole thing of the whole theme of the game of rediscovering your passions. No, I don't mean just for each other. I mean your passion for other things in life outside the relationship, outside the who's doing the childcare. You forgot her dentist appointment today, or whatever it is that the game starts on, that first scene. I think that whole journey they go on as a couple is really important in any relationship, marriage, whether you've got kids or not. Just not forgetting why you got together. And when they go back to the ski resort, I thought that actually that was a really nice moving scene, wasn't it, Pepe? You remember when they went back when they went back to where they'd got engaged and all that? It was really sort of sweet.
I think my favorite scene to play was that one. I think it's in the same section where they're on the ski lift and they're going up. I think it's right around the lodge that you're talking about, Annabelle. And I think that going back to your first question, I think maybe to play that was my favorite, because it was the moment where, like Annabelle's saying, they kind of come to a point where they stop trying to pull in different directions, and they sort of acknowledge something kind of heartfelt about the truth of them having once been in love and how far they've traveled from that.
And don't you think, the whole thing about computer games, a lot of the time, or it has been in the past, this is obviously changing, but like the boyfriend would go off and play computer games for 5 hours in the evening, you wouldn't see them. So in relationships, just in life, there'd be a lot of like one person would go off and play a computer game. And what this game did, for a lot of people that I know, they play with their partner and they're communicating while they're doing it. And I think that's the beauty of this game. It does touch on really real subjects, and probably started off some conversations that maybe weren't being had because you just go into separate rooms and do your own thing. And actually, take out that this song, helped everyone. But I think maybe it probably has got some people together that wouldn't normally play together, and that's fantastic, isn't it? You know, because it should be a good thing, not just, you know, the lads on their headphones, you know, between mates, but actually relationships. Couples have
being in the same room and doing it. Yeah.
And it's a very it's not an easy game, but it's very sort of like beginner friendly. Like me and my mate played it and just like smashed it out in like 2 days, whereas my girlfriend and I, she doesn't really play games like this before, but she's doing very well for someone that doesn't play video games. It's very easy to get a hold of, it's very sort of simple, and yeah, like Cody, like Pepe mentioned before, sorry, I just called you by your character name.
Alright.
Yeah, like you mentioned before, when they're on sort of like the ski lift, that's a really good moment because I feel like the whole game is sort of very crazy, and you're like doing a lot of things and you're going from this area to that area, and it's sort of one of the first moments where they just kind of like stop and kind of like reminisce, and they kind of, like you said, it's kind of the moment where they kind of acknowledge that they're not pulling apart anymore, and it's kind of, they can just rest and have a breather and kind of look back on the journey. So I do really like that scene.
Yeah, and I think the pace of that scene as well is so different, because so many of the scenes are all about where are we going to next, right? We've got to get there. How are we going to do it? Or blaming, it was your fault because of this, and that's why that's happened, you know. And that scene felt very different for that reason as well.
Did you guys know sort of what your characters would look like when you auditioned for it, or was that something that you really saw for the first time once you got the roles?
I don't think we did, because it was a shock when I saw May, and of course, because we start off looking like ourselves anyway, well, they actually did the whole 3D captured our faces so we look quite similar to ourselves for the earlier and the later scenes of the game. I mean, often you do get an image and you get a picture sent to you when you're auditioning for a game of that character, but that's when it's more like a creature or maybe something, you know, not very naturalistic. I do think I got one as May with her blue wig and, you know, knitted yellow top and glasses. I don't think so, because I'm sure that's developed a bit along the way. I don't know. What about you, Pepe?
No, I don't think we didn't see what we looked like till we got to Stockholm and started doing the mocap. And then we saw the characters. Also, I think maybe Cody evolved further from where you did originally, because they changed how doughy he was, or his arm, I can't remember what, or his head. They did quite a lot. When we first started to when he finished, Cody looked quite different. Whereas I think May, you changed, but it was more or less how May was going to look. But we didn't see that until we got there, till we were like literally in front of the screen and going, oh look, I'm moving, and that's you know, that was when we
when I first did mocap, which was on Baldur's Gate.
Oh, nice.
I was in the outfit thinking, oh, this is exciting. And then they get you to choose your avatar, like what color you're going to be, and you can choose the color, and then you start moving. It's moving. And you're like, this is amazing. This is just great. This is working. I mean, isn't it? I mean, I'm very excited about everything, but that was very exciting.
It is brilliant, and I still have absolutely no idea how it works. Even though we spent so many days in that studio over 2-3 years, I have no idea. Every morning it would be like, okay, Pepe, Annabelle, you got to get calibrated, or it's calibration time or something. Yes. And we'd have to stand there and do the same movements every day. I have no idea. I just sort of treated it as a bit of a workout, really, standing there doing those lunges and things. But I mean, I still don't really get how it all works with the dots and suddenly appears there. It's brilliant, but baffling to me.
You're doing your workout to get calibrated and you're absolutely knackered when it's work time.
Yeah.
So this one is sort of more specifically to Joseph, since you voiced 2 characters. How did it come across to voice Dr. Hakim? Did you just do an accent and that kind of surprised the director, or did you audition for the 2 characters?
I guess I auditioned for the 2 characters. The initial audition was with Annabelle in real life. So sort of at the tail end of it, Joseph, I don't know if you recall this, Annabelle, but it seemed to me like he just thought of it in that moment and went, hey, do you want to read this guy? He's a book. And there was no, he was a book of love. So literally it was on the spot. So I guess because it was love and I'm half Mexican, love always makes, you know, it made me think, you know, he could be like a Antonio Banderas type, you know, Lotharian guy. Even though Dr. Hakim doesn't sound very Spanish or Mexican or Hispanic in any way. But and then he kind of evolved from there, I suppose. I definitely had Antonio in my in my brain, I think, when I looked at it. But that was just like an instinctive thing. And Joseph went, "Yeah, great, boom." Like, really? So you know, and then it grew from there, really.
Annabelle, did that surprise you when he all of a sudden came out with that voice and you're like, what are you doing?
It's really weird. It seemed like I always knew that you were going to do it as well, because we did self-tapes for this first. You know, you record an audition at home, and then Pepe and I got asked to go in and meet in person, and we had to improvise a scene where we had gone to see a relationship therapist, and then they had me doing May as American at one point as well, and then I went back to British. I can't even remember what I did when you did your Hakim bit in the audition, but I think I just thought, well, obviously, yeah, you are going to do both, because I speak fluent Spanish, my husband's Spanish, and I knew Pepe was half Mexican, so we'd already had this sort of, we both speak Spanish conversation. So I knew that he had that one up his sleeve. It just sort of fitted well, didn't it? But I suppose it is really unusual that you played the main guy in a video game and did the voice of the other one. I don't expect that happens a lot.
Talented.
No. I mean, to be honest, when we got into it, I kept saying to Joseph, I was like, I'm really concerned that we're all going to be in this scene talking to each other, and it's going to be so obvious that it's me doing. I know they're different accents. You know, I know they're different accents, and potentially that's why I pushed Hakim in the way he ended up going. Not just because Joseph's movements were so crazy, it was also a sort of conscious effort to try and make him vocally very, very different to Cody. And a lot of the choices I made potentially were spawned from that desire or that need to make him vocally very other to Cody. Joseph didn't tell me before I went to that audition with Annabelle that he was going to ask me to do that, because I hadn't done it for my self-tape, and it was very random, very, very random. But you know, the book is a completely
crazy character,
a wild creation of Joseph's. I think that even Joseph didn't really know. I think he just had an idea of this thing, but he didn't have a clear idea of what he wanted it to be. And so when I did that voice, I think he just went, "Yeah, that'll work," as opposed to it being something we were searching for. You know, it was just a sort of happy coincidence, really.
Yeah, because when I told my friends that I was doing this interview, I was like, "Oh, yeah, I've got an interview planned with you know, the people of It Takes Two, you know, like Cody, May, and Rose." And my friend was like, "Oh, what about the book?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's the same voice actor as Cody." And he's like, "What? No way." So if it makes you feel any better, we had no idea. So
that's very gratifying.
Was there any plan to kind of make you American? Like, was that something that came up on the day, or did you audition for an American character? Because you've got, you know, your natural voice, the Cody's voice, and Dr. Hakim's voice. Like, it's all, you're doing multiple things at once.
It's partly just happy coincidence that I have dual heritage, basically. And my mum is from the US. A lot of my voice work, especially, is either Hispanic or American. I very rarely get asked to speak anywhere near close to what I actually sound like. It's weird. I think it was just, I just got lucky that I had that mixture of upbringing that allowed me to, you know, be able to hear accents not too badly.
So Annabelle, if Joseph wasn't happy with Joseph's performance as Dr. Hakim, would you take up the reins and try the Spanish voice, or?
Ah, que sí, hombre, sin problema, claro que sí. No, of course I would. I was jealous. I wanted an extra character. I was asking if I could at least, could I not voice the French frog taxi driver? I was desperate to be that person. I kept saying, please, can I do another little character? To show off my versatility, please. No, sadly, I was just, I only had May. But funny, Pepe and I did do an interview about It Takes Two in Spanish for a Spanish radio station over the summer. And that was funny, wasn't it, Pepe? Because even though Pepe and I have spoken to each other in Spanish a little bit before, just messing around, whatever, doing a whole sort of hour interview. And like you say, because Pepe speaking English is pretty neutral. I would say you sound like you're more international school type London accent, you know what I mean? But that's sort of slight international British accent, you know what I mean? Whereas I've clearly got a northern accent or northwestern accent. But then when we speak in Spanish, it's so funny because like Pepe is clearly strong Mexican accent. It's just, it's so strange hearing each other speak different languages as well. Well, for me it is, you know.
Yeah, and Annabelle is completely fluent and she sounds Spanish, so.
Well, not totally.
Well, pretty, not bad, not pretty close for an English person, I'd say. Pretty damn close.
What are some difficulties with acting and voice acting that you think maybe people don't really know about? So things that kind of either took you by surprise, or you think if someone's trying out for voice acting, what are some things that you think are difficult that are kind of unknown?
I think you've got to be kind of quite prepared to change accents, be quite versatile with accents, because I found that a lot of the time they will specify specific accents for auditioning, but sometimes I get in the room and they'll say, can you just try it Scottish? And you'll go, yep. But accent work and stuff is really important with it. And just playing about with your voice a bit. Doing kids' voices, it's something that I stumbled upon when I was doing an audition for my first ever job out of drama school. And my mate was like, oh my God, you can do this voice. And I went, it sounds a bit weird. And she was like, no, it doesn't sound weird. And now I'm doing more kids' voices in computer games than anywhere else. I mean,
yeah.
And that's amazing, Claire, isn't it? That is really amazing, and not everyone can do that. You know,
yeah.
I can sound young, but I've got a certain timbre to my voice. I cannot sound like you as Rose. I mean, I think it's incredible how you sound as Rose.
But that's from sort of just having a go and going, can I do, what does my voice do? Because we just speak normally, you know. And well, actually, most of my games, I play multiple characters rather than a lead. So I tend to do, you know, like in Witcher 3, I played like 6 characters. Well, maybe actually, I think I ended up playing about 10 characters in Witcher 3. So one sort of quite big part, and then loads of other characters. And there's like, can you do a Northern? Can you do Scott? Can you do this? Can you play a kid in that one and an adult in this? So, and Baldur's Gate, I played 4 characters. So if you can cover lots of characters,
yeah,
it's a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah, just have that flexibility.
You really have to play around with your voice, don't you? I mean, this It Takes Two was unusual in that respect. Just play the one character. I mean, I played loads of characters in Divinity. I'm terrible remembering names of games. Divinity: The Original Sin, was that's the game? Yep. So anyway, I did multiple characters in that. I mean, about 30. Some of them only had 4 lines, and so you just very quickly have to think, okay. And so just like exploring the pitch of your voice, just something as simple as that, just making one character more breathy or a bit more staccato, anything. But you really have you need a whole bank of voices, really, a little library of voices in your head that you can delve into.
I was just going to say that in the room, you are given lines that you haven't seen before a lot of the time, or the night before, very, very briefly. Sometimes you don't get sent them at all. So you are sometimes blind reading for like 2 hours with a character. Or because of the NDAs you sign, they can't send you it, or they can't send you it until like an hour before, and then you don't have time to really prep it properly. So you go in and you're kind of just on the spot, standing there, reading these lines, having to make sense of it. So practicing reading, just reading anything out loud, trying to make sense of it before you,
Yeah, no, I think just having the ability or the courage to make big decisions quickly, like on the back of what everyone's just said, is that you will be asked to do something and you just have to be kind of bold and brave with stuff and have the courage of your convictions when you do it. Don't be afraid of it not being very, very good, because basically someone might go, that's fucking great.
Yeah.
And if you censor yourself, it's very inhibiting to that creative process, because you need to be able to just be unfiltered and go, I'll try that and do that, and sort of not put any shackles on yourself. Then people will get you back as well and go, oh, they were great because they just gave me loads of. And sometimes people just want, sometimes these directors, they just want options. They just want to be able to choose different versions of the same thing and have that available to them. And yeah, like Claire said, playing around with your voice. I started to get into animation when I had kids. My eldest son, he was kind of always very difficult to go to sleep anyway, and so my sister gave me these box of puppets, hand puppets, and I ended up just like doing puppet shows for him in these funny voices. And I ended up then putting that on a voice reel for animation. And then I also was watching a lot of cartoons because he was and they were, and so you kind of become a fan essentially of the form. I think as a voice actor, listen to the radio, play video games, watch cartoons. If you're going to do that, it's like you have to become a student of the form in order to be able to play the game.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it until now, but when you're sort of, like doing puppet shows for your kids or reading bedtime stories and you're doing like voices for characters, do you kind of use that as like an exercise or a bit of research to test what kind of voices you do?
I massively do, yeah.
He's
Yeah.
always performing. He always needs his audience there, even if they're 3 years old, refusing to go to bed.
Yes. My kids just say, Mom, stop doing the voices. So I don't know. Do you am? I mean,
Yeah, I'll be doing a voice, and my daughter will go, no, that's not right. So I'll do another one. No, still doesn't sound like. No, he doesn't sound like that. I'm like,
same here. Yeah.
You're like, the monster let out a big roar. Oh, I don't know if I can do that. So I had looked on your agent's like website and profile and things like that, and I think most or all of you said that you can do an Australian accent. Can I test you guys and see what it's like?
Yes,
Pressure's-
Pressure's
yeah,
on.
why not?
I think you need to give us a phrase to say. Kyle,
Pepe's,
you need to give us a
Pepe's
phrase that
cringing.
we all say.
Okay. For each of you, it'll be, my name is Annabelle Dowler. My name is Joseph Balderrama. My name is Clare Corbett.
My
Right.
name's Annabelle Dowler.
My name's Joseph Balderrama. That was shit. That was fucking awful. I need to work on
Are
it.
you
I
from
need-
Birmingham?
G'day. My name's Clare Corbett.
Bonus points for saying g'day.
Thanks. They're actually talking about accents with so we did a little film for Audible, lovely actor Cobner, and talking about what accents you find hard and what accents you find easy. And we did a bit of Australian, but it's very hard, isn't it, when you're trying to get, it's the differentiation between that and New Zealand, and so trying to
Yeah.
get against. And also I was saying that I'm from Bristol originally, so my accent should be like this. And it was like this before I became an actor, and then it just went out. It just sort of slid out, and I sort of became a bit nothing, which is what I'm now. But I find American and Southern Irish easier because of the R sound. So it's interesting when you start getting into the accent thing, and what you're good at, and what you do, and why you're good at that one, and what it is about the shape of it. It's fascinating.
That is why the American accent sounds like that, is because a lot of the original settlers were from Bristol and from the West Country.
There
And
we go.
so that is the roticness in the American accent comes literally from the West Country.
There you go.
Yeah, the Australian accent is a bit of a mix and mashup of Australian, New Zealand, and Britain, or like English. They're all sort of relatively the same, and they all have like different words from each other. So yeah, I think you all did an amazing job. I did kind of put you on the spot there, but I think you all did fantastic. So
Well, so kind.
are there any sort of particular exercises you do or warm-ups you do to not hurt your voice, or can you kind of just go straight into it? Obviously, if you have to do like a big scream, it might have to do a bit more warming up, but do you have to do any warm-ups, or can you just kind of go straight into it?
Oh, the screaming. I should say I do, but I don't do warm-ups for voice work really. Or unless I'm doing singing, maybe if there's a song or something in it, I might do a bit of warm-up for that. I had to do quite a lot of pitched, raised voice work in 40K, the Warhammer, and I had to do just hour-long sessions because it was quite demanding, the voice I had and the amount of shouting over like "kill him," all that sort of stuff. But I know a lot of men tend to get a lot of those like 2-3 hour long sessions of shouting, but my voice would just go. So for me, I drink like honey and lemon through the session. I asked to have the shouting at the end of the session. If it's a whole session of shouting, I tend to just say, even if it was a whole session of shouting, I wouldn't do it. It'd be half an hour. Because there's so many other things that we're doing, which like all of us, you can't lose your voice.
I had one experience with Battlefield. I had quite a big part in, and I remember it was basically like a month and a half where we would do, they started off saying, oh, we're going to do 4-hour sessions. I did one. I was like, no, max is 2. Because basically all of that was shouting and screaming and like fire and all that, and yeah, I think I really damaged my voice doing that game.
Also, careful. If it's a character you're going to be playing, it's not just a 5-line character. Be careful what voice you pick for it. I did an audition for a character it was one of the Warhammer ones, and ended up getting the part. And when I went in there, they were like, "Yeah, we really like what you did, but can you make her even more sort of, croaky, guttural?" And she was this sort of lady of ashes, this sort of ghoulish, skeletal figure. And I came up with this voice and they were happy with it. And I thought, oh, yeah, that sounds good. But I didn't really realise I was going to be going back and playing that. I did about 10 days as her in the end. And my voice was wrecked. Did all this weird stuff, you know. And I really felt that each session after I'd done it. And I thought I wouldn't have been, if I'd had to say sing in a show or something, I couldn't have done that at the same time.
It sounds like you sort of did it a bit of both in It Takes Two. What do you kind of prefer out of recording with the other actors or in your own isolated booth? Which one do you think, obviously some would have its pros and cons, but which one do you overall prefer?
Always with the other actor for me. Being in the room, you can bounce off each other and it just makes a general recording session more fun as well, for me anyway.
Yeah, but it's rarely the case, isn't it, with computer games? I mean, you don't get in a room anymore. I mean, it's normally, unless you're doing, and even with mocap, not all the time are you in the room with loads of other people.
The only time I've done it in the room on a video game was with Pepe in It Takes Two. That's the only time. All the other video games I've done have all been on my own, the voicing character.
So of course, as actors, we want to be together, but we don't always get the chance in that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think It Takes Two is a perfect example of, it's not that it can't work, obviously, because it does work and that's how the industry makes it, but It Takes Two is a good example, at least, of how much value there is in putting people in the same room, because you get stuff that you hadn't planned for, and sometimes that's the magic, basically.
Yeah.
So I've had this kind of explained in other interviews that I've done with voice actors. Do you ever catch yourself when you're recording for lines making strange faces? Because I heard that that's very common.
All the time, imagine. All the time. I think my face is permanently in some sort of heightened expression. No, probably not on this video, and I'm just staring onto my silly little iPhone with glasses and I can't see properly. I think all the time, and you just naturally do, don't you, when you're taking on a character. And even when I do certain accents, my face changes. So yes.
Yeah, I think that's one of the best things about voice acting, is that you don't care what your face looks like. I'm sure there's all manner of really weird faces you make, but it's because you're not conscious of it in the way that, you know, if you're in front of a camera, you might be too conscious of what your face is doing. So it like gets inverted. When you're recording and you have to match your voice to the lips, it's mainly done with like cartoons and animation. How frustrating is that? I love ADR. I actually yesterday I've dubbed a Spanish film. I find that one of the most fun jobs to do, to try and match lips and try and make things fit. It's almost like a puzzle. I really enjoy ADR. I do quite a lot of it, and I think it's really fun to sort of, especially when you like nail the lips and you're like, yes! And it's a really satisfying feeling when you sync it.
I agree. I did something called Trash Trucks, although it's called Giant Jack on Netflix. They do a lot of American into British, because a lot of the parents are like, oh, I don't want this, calling it trash. It's not trash, it's rubbish. Right. And I played the mum in that, and it's really lovely actually when you're in there sort of trying to work out where their breath is or what it is. Sometimes you do have to change the text for that to make it fit in sometimes, don't you? It's got to be on there and their mouths coming together. What is it? What would that be? What word could that be?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've never done dubbing. I've only ever ADR'd myself in stuff I've done. You know, I've never done like a foreign film.
It's quite fun. It's really fun.
So what is some of the biggest differences between doing on-camera acting or like on a stage as opposed to voice acting? What are some of the biggest jumps between those two?
You can wear what you want.
Yeah.
Worry about what you look like. You're not cast because of what you look like, which is brilliant, because you can play anything. I mean, there's so many differences, aren't they? I mean,
there are, and we've all done. I mean, I first met Claire doing radio drama. I don't know if you remember, I did an Agatha Christie. We did an Agatha Christie at the BBC years ago. I remember that. And then we did another one in Brighton somewhere. I can't remember what that was. And Pepe and Claire have done radio plays together, and we've all been on the Radio Rep, actually. The BBC Radio Repertory Company is where you just do loads of radio drama. And I think I came to radio drama having done theatre. And I think, looking back, I was probably pretty big in my performance at first, because I hadn't done much TV. I was still playing everything quite big. And actually, I think the best thing I sort of learned, but this is more radio drama, was just look at the mic and you look at the actors in the read-through, make eye contact in the read-through to try and get that connection. But when you're doing it, the mic as the person, and really get intimate with the mic, and you can take it down as much as possible. And I think I sort of cringe a bit from my first radio performances, I think. But again, it's slightly different in video games because you're often projecting a lot. You don't have those. I mean, it depends on the game, doesn't it? You can obviously, like you say, get some really intimate scenes now on video games. But there is a skill to it, I think, and it is different. It's just something you sort of have to learn. And I find sometimes with radio acting, or you can come in on cue, but that's working with another actor. Sometimes you can almost come in on cue too quickly because you're not listening as you would do if you were looking into those person's eyes with lines that you've learned.
One of the key for me differences is the parts that you get to play. And like Claire said, you know, for me, for example, because I am dual heritage and I live in the UK, the way the industry views me in TV and film land in this country is very specific.
Right.
And I can count on one hand the amount of parts that I play a British character. And that becomes really frustrating because the reason you got into it is probably to escape yourself, right? And pretend to be something that you aren't. And the way the industry in certain ways is going, and it's, I think, starting to happen in voiceover world as well, where they just kind of want people to be where they're from and be who they are. And I think that is a really tedious direction, because I think that it's entirely contrary to the very premise of being an actor, which is to be something that you are not. As being someone who comes from a minority background, I don't want to see someone not being authentic, but I think you can be authentic without being that very thing from that very place. I feel like the biggest difference, actually beyond the technical differences, is the joy of really allowing yourself to pretend, to really like to act, to pretend. It's just more fun.
So how did you kind of jump from on-camera acting to voice acting, if that was the order that it went in?
I don't know how it goes in Australia, but here in the UK, you generally have an agent for your acting work, and then you need a different agent for voiceovers. It was only sort of a year or two after leaving drama school, one of my friends had got a voiceover agent, was getting quite nice, lucrative work, and I thought, I need to try and get on this bandwagon now. And you get a voice demo made, and then you send it out to agents, and you get an agent that way. And I mean, actually, the video gaming world is a slightly grey area in that work can come through either agent, because some see it as an acting job as well, mocap. But generally, voiceovers, documentary narration, that sort of thing, commercials, that would all come through your voiceover agent. So for me, it was just about wanting to get into that world pretty early on in my career, and just making a choice to try and get an agent to get me work that way.
I think also when you leave drama school, it's not like you get a choice, to be honest. You're given, you know, if your first job is TV, it's TV. If your first job is someone saying to you, oh, you'd be good in this animation, as an actor, it's whatever comes through. So for me, I did Carlton Hobbs, which is a radio award, won that. And so I was given 6 months of the BBC radio rep. The first job I did was a comedy drama on stage for a live audience for the radio. So it's called Absolute Power, which was with Stephen Fry. So an agent came to see it. And then from that, I then got theatre, but kept doing the radio, and then voiceovers for me, did a similar thing to Annabelle, and just chucked my tape off to loads of people. And actually most of them came back and said, we've already got your voice, because they heard this. And I hadn't really put a little bit of kids stuff on there, but not much. And she put me up for the Buckingham Palace audio guide, and I got that, and she took me on from there. So and then from that, I just started getting voiceover work. But I mean, the voiceover stuff just works beautifully alongside. So theatre, if you're doing an evening show, you've got a day, you can do a little voiceover, and also now you can do it all remotely. So voiceovers fit in brilliantly with everything. For me, anyway, I'm speaking personally, they're just parts of the acting world, all those jobs. You know, are you just a voice actor? Well, no, I just happen to be doing more of that at the moment because I'm not doing theatre because I've got young kids. What auditions did I get this week? Not loads, so I'm doing more voiceovers. So for me, it's not really as much of a choice maybe as it is for other people, but you get what you've been up for, what's available.
Yeah, I think it would be nice to think that people make that conscious choice to jump from one domain to the other, and that we have that level of power over our destiny. But the reality is much more what Annabelle and Claire have already very articulately said, which is basically you just get on the horse that comes along.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
generally speaking, I think the best advice that I ever got was just ride the horse that comes along, because you never know if there's going to be another horse coming along.
Yeah.
And so you end up finding yourself just saying yes. And if you more than not say yes to stuff, sometimes you realize, oh, I really don't want to do that again. But more often than not, you find that it opens another avenue or another door that you didn't even know was there.
Do you have any sort of preference between voicing a main character like Cody or Rose or May, or someone, like you mentioned before, like a soldier that has like 50 lines of dialogue but they're kind of in the background? Do you have a preference of main character or background character in video games?
I never like playing background characters.
No?
Everyone wants to get the lead part, don't they? Although I do think I work more because of the versatility. I think I'm sometimes used now because I can do 5 of the characters rather than just the one. I'm more useful in a computer game. We give you all these different parts, and they're all sort of medium parts. But yeah, so yeah, that's interesting.
No, that's very true though. That is very true. That when you get the opportunity to do lots of different ones, so especially if they're small, so you don't have to like really investigate it too thoroughly. You can just sprinkle it quickly and then move on to the next one. That is fun too. What I was thinking in my head is when you just have these army games where you're just like random soldier 3 shouting grenade all the time. That's fucking boring.
Yeah.
When you're cast as additional voices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not that much fun.
Do you have, either in It Takes Two or any other video games that you've done in the past, or just sort of shows or movies or anything, do you have a favourite line that either helps you get in the voice or in the zone of acting, or just one that really hit you emotionally?
Good question.
Thank you.
Do you mean a voice or that? I don't know if I understand the question.
Any voice, not necessarily line, or just like a voice that you've done that really like stuck with you, something that either one of your characters said or was just a part of a scene that your character was in that is like your favorite, that just kind of hit home or stuck with you over the years.
No, but I did enjoy. I had to actually sing as Belle in Sea of Thieves. And we had to do this whole, and I love it. I'm a sort of frustrated musical theatre person. I'm not good enough to be musical theatre, but I would love to be. And I really enjoyed doing that little performance in Sea of Thieves as this sort of sexy pirate who was rather good at harmonies. So that was a highlight for me. Although when we did It Takes Two, as Pepe will was witness to, they actually dubbed my singing voice, which I was most offended by. They wanted a very good, pure, high, sort of trained voice. And I'm a bit like, I'm actually in a choir in real life and I'm a tenor. So they clearly didn't want my booming bass. But it was quite funny to then hear myself dubbed with this sort of rather sweet voice that I've never really had.
So I was part of the Demon Souls. That was the first game I ever recorded. And I did this sort of like character crow, Sparkly Crow. I don't even know what the name is of it. Sparkly the Crow, I think. And that character, I keep, whenever I talk to sort of students about sort of voices, and actually going back to what Pepe said about just giving something a bit ridiculous. So they said it's this crow character, but you don't ever see it, but it has these sparkly, twinkly things, and that's all it says. So that character, I just went in and was like, sparkly, me, sparkly, twinkly, and did this weird thing. And that character, I suppose, that's the one that comes back to me about the computer games I do, because that was then that character came back, I think, in the next game. But it was one of those ones that was sort of just a bit weird and a bit creepy, because you never saw the character, you just heard this voice. And yeah, so for me, that it was that. And actually those games, the Demon Souls and Dark Souls games, the characters in those are really weird and wonderful, and you were given real free rein just to play with those. It was great, actually. They've been re-released, actually, haven't they? Dark Souls was re-released, or Demon Souls, one of them was re-released.
Dark Souls was, I think.
We had to re-audition for our parts.
Oh, really?
So some people couldn't do the voices anymore because it was either they'd got too old or whatever it was. So Yeah, but I've managed to get the mind back. But yes.
I love doing Hakim because he was so bombastic, and I think he's probably the one that people have asked me to do for them when they realize that's who I am, or that I did that.
Just your collaboration line. Everyone quotes that, don't they?
Yeah, that was quite a good catch line or catchphrase. It's in a game actually, and it was a voice kind of like Claire was saying, that it wasn't what I'd done in the audition for it. It was for a game called Lies of P, and I play this sort of weird disembodied robot character called Arlecchino, who sort of just speaks through the game because it just kind of guides, sort of like Hakim guides you through the game, but at the end of the game he sort of has this big scene with the player, and they just didn't really know what they wanted, and they kind of cast me, but then we got into the room and they were like, well, we sort of want him to sound a bit like the Joker, and so finding that voice was really, really fun. And I kind of just and he had pages of dialogue at the end of the game where it was long monologue speeches, which is very rare for computer games especially. But I found that it was one of the only experiences I've had where it really flowed out of me in a way that was I really got into the sort of headspace of it, I suppose. And it was kind of, I guess, it was a very inspired by Heath Ledger's Joker performance probably, but that was a really fun one. I really had fun with that, and it was hard, but it was really fun. It was really fun, I think.
I just remembered it because I really have to remember this for when I don't know, it's just like a story that I had to remember to tell. So my girlfriend and I have been watching Heartstopper. We recently, I think a couple of months ago, we finished it. Because we started playing It Takes Two, and then we started watching Heartstopper, and we were kind of jumping back and forth between the two of them. And it wasn't until the end of season 2 of Heartstopper, I think the last episode you're in, and it's the whole dinner scene. I was watching it, and I'm like, where do I know him from? It just bugged me through the entire episode, and then it had the credits, and I'm like, oh my god, that's where I know him from. So this was also just as I started researching for the interview and asked you all to do it. So it's all of it kind of just fell into place. And I said to my girlfriend, I'm like, the dad in this scene, do you recognize him? And she's like, no. I'm like, he's also doing a different voice in this scene, but he's Cody, and the book in the game we're playing. She's like, would not have figured that out. So it's just one of those things where it's starring Joseph Balderrama. It's what? How did I not pick up on this? We're at the end of season 2, and you're throughout the show.
Well, you'll have season 3 coming to you this year.
Awesome. Are you in it?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great show. I think it's I was very very lucky to be involved. I think it was a really lovely piece.
Just before we wrap it up a little bit, is there something sort of about your character that either when you were auditioning for it or sort of as you finished it that really stuck with you about the character and was your kind of favorite quality of the character?
I think just playing May for so long, inevitably you give some of your own personality to the character. I probably started snapping at Cody the way I snap at my own husband, I think these marital scenes were pretty realistic.
Did any real life arguments get into the game and you're like, oh, yeah, where'd that come from?
Always, yeah. I don't know, Pepe. You're probably better at answering that one for me. I don't know.
I mean, kind of, to be honest, Annabelle, Cody is he's not a million miles away from me. I know he sounds different to how I sound, but I felt very connected to Cody. And I think one of the things that me and Annabelle, I think we both felt that way about our individual characters in a way. And so you don't often get that feeling when you play a part where you really just kind of just fit into it.
And it was actually not even just talking about the character May, but just because we were so involved in the process of the game more than you would be normally with a video game. I really missed the game in my life when we finished recording, because it had been a massive part of our lives for 2 years. Even though we were doing other acting jobs and stuff, it was always there in between other stuff, wasn't it? It was like a sort of constant for 2 years, which is just so unusual. And I sort of felt a bit bereft after it finished. And so definitely just the whole Haze Light and It Takes Two vibe I took away with me, And
my character, I mean, obviously I worked on it for less time than these guys, but just the innocence and beauty of that kind of age, and how she just was really a sweet, honest, open child. And I think it's lovely. And I'm just really proud of what the project has come to and how successful it's been, and especially for these guys, how much they've worked on it. I came in at the end and went, there you go. And emotionally for a long time. And the bits I've watched and the bits I've seen, I just think it's absolutely fantastic, and I'm really sort of proud to be a part of it. And just think it's been a really lovely project to be a part of, and I can't believe it's 3 years on.
Yeah. You'll all have to definitely give it a play sometime, because it's just a phenomenal game.
Yeah.
And I've played A Way Out and absolutely love that, but something about this game, I don't know, just the overall story and just how creative it is. I think that's the best word to kind of describe it. Like, every chapter of the game is all completely different, new gameplay, new setting, just everything is different, and just, creative is, I think, the best way to describe the game. It's absolutely phenomenal, and you all did a perfect job with it.
Oh, thank you, Carl.
thank you very much. Thank you.
Been lovely chatting with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you guys so much for doing this. It was a little bit difficult trying to get the time difference in everyone's schedules, but we've made it work, and I think, you all did a fantastic job. Thank you so much for answering my questions, and I had an amazing time.
Oh, thank you, Kyle.
Kyle.
Lovely to meet you.